Hi, this is Richard from AgriFutures and welcome to the Permaculture Design course. This video is going to walk you through how to navigate through the course and some of the different features that are on the different platforms. The first place to start, I'll look at the homepage of AgriFutures. So when you log on to www.agrifutures.co.nz and you've been enrolled in the course, there is this front icon there, and if you click on that, it will take you through to the Moodle platform, which acts as the learning platform for the course, holds all the different front pages for the different topics, and also where you submit all your tasks, including the final design report. So when you are taken through to it, the first module is a welcome, and in the welcome module there's a little bit of an introduction there. There's a link to the Facebook group. So the Facebook group is a way to probably best interact online, so you can share any of your design tasks and your final report there, and also share any interesting topics or ask any questions of the group there. So it's a good kind of space to have some collaborative online learning. And also there's a forum down the bottom here, so you can introduce yourself to that forum, and you can ask any questions there of the course too. So that's another place you can go to if you don't want to go onto the Facebook group to ask questions and share resources. There's also an announcement forum there, and any kind of announcements that happen during the course I'll put into that, and you should get an email that comes out with any of the posts to those forums. So and that's our link back to the website. So the first three topics in the welcome, the first one is a permaculture introduction. So that goes through the history and the background and the philosophy of permaculture design. And there's some videos there that's by the founders of permaculture, just to give you a taste of what permaculture is about. The course navigation one goes through all the different learning tasks and all the different modules within the course, so it's a great place to kind of get an overview and of what the course will be about and what we'll cover. And the design task one is all the different design task submissions, including the final PDC submission. And what I've done with these design tasks is break them up into different sections of that final report. So in the first module, all the resources are oriented towards creating an introduction, and then in the second module, when we look at the philosophy of permaculture design and how regenerative design works, those resources are being directed into writing this background. And then when you go into the different characteristics of the site, there's some design tasks here on creating a site analysis, on base maps, and a sector analysis. So the first part, this introduction, is just really getting a context of what your design project is, what are your strengths, what are the market opportunities, and how can you best kind of create a targeted design that you'll use to apply the learning resources from the course too. And then once you got that project all kind of finalized or lined up, you then go through understanding permaculture design and systems thinking and regenerative design and how ecosystems work, and you summarize your understanding of permaculture into a little background. So that's kind of taking your project, summarizing what permaculture design means to you, and then these next three are looking at the particular details of your site. So looking at the topography and the water and the climate, the previous land use of your site, and bringing all those resources together into creating some sector analysis and some concept sketches. So a sector analysis and a base map, sorry. And then when we look at the module where we go through different zones of production, so we look at creating high intensity annual production, which is zone 1, and then zone 2 we look at orchard design, and then zone 3 we look at grazing systems. One or all of those different zones will apply to your own property, and the concept sketches are taking the ideas that you've explored within those modules to create your concept sketches for your particular site design. And then that kind of outlines a range of different design options available to you. And then once you've got all those options laid out, you can see how the different systems best interconnect together and create your final plan. So your final plan is taking all those ideas, seeing how they best fit together to create a nice kind of plan style view of your property. And there's when you click to these links here, it takes you to the particular part of the Moodle course which explains that design task, and there's an outline there of what's required, and there's links there to any resources that you need, and there may be some PDF documents or similar as reference to help you with that task. So then the description is explaining the different zones of production that you've created. So what was your design intent with creating those different zones of production, and what is your overall vision of the whole property? And then the implementation strategy is how you're actually going to set it up. So are you going to first, you might have a 10-acre property, for example, and you may decide to set up the infrastructure first, or you might decide to plant the trees first, or set up a high yield annual garden first and use the income from that to redirect into setting up other areas of your property. But the idea of the implementation strategy is using your time and resources available to you. How would you best set up the system that you've designed? So as you work through the course and you do these different design task submissions, your ideas will probably change and develop during the course, and the final submission there is putting all those different design tasks together into your final report. And the structure of that final report is exactly as these design tasks have been laid out. The final report should have a background, so an introduction, a background, a site analysis, base match, etc., just following all those different parts of all those different design tasks that have been embedded in the course. Down the bottom there's also some videos to help just overview some of the intentions of permaculture design and how to put it into your final report. So that's all in the just the welcome part of the course, and then when you click down the side here, these are all the different modules of the course. So module 1 has got 3 parts to it. The creative agent is trying to get a sense of what are your strengths, your personality type, and creating a vision for your intention through the design. So what would you hope to achieve in it? And looking at your strengths and your personality type, creating some stretch goals of things you could achieve, and then looking at those stretch goals, how can you create some SMART goals? So kind of specific, measurable, timely goals that you can use to break down those stretch goals into things you can achieve, generally within 6 months. So they're quite specific and small tasks. And then the environmental analysis is looking at what are all the different factors around you that will influence your design. So what are the cultural trends, the environmental trends, and looking at those different factors, how can you then take your design intention and look at your particular strengths to create a particular niche for yourself. So you may identify particular strengths that you have within the first part, and identify trends within your environment there to identify where you're best positioning your particular product or services. So where are the opportunities that you can take advantage of? And then know the end user. The end user may be yourself, or it may be someone you're designing for, it may be a community group, but whoever the end user is, trying to look at what are the pains and gains of that end user, and how can you make sure that your service or your product that you're creating through your design is going to best serve those end users. So that's keeping the endpoint in mind at the very start of your design. So module 2 is then looking at the background philosophy of permaculture design. So the pattern recognition part there is looking at what kind of different patterns you can see in nature, and how can you learn from the pattern recognition to apply it to your own designs. So for example, you might look at the structure of a forest and see different patterns in that structure of a natural forest, and then try to replicate those patterns within your own design of a food forest. The principles of design are looking at what are the principles of permaculture. So David Holmgren's come up with these guiding principles, and the intention of a principle is really you have an endpoint in mind, and then the principles are the things that will reliably guide your actions to that endpoint. So in permaculture, they've developed 12 of them, and if you follow those principles, it's a way of aligning your actions to reach those regenerative outcomes that you desire. But it's quite useful to also personalize those principles and think within your own context, what are your outcomes that you want to achieve, and how can you create some principles that will best align your actions towards those outcomes. It's quite good when you do that to simplify the principles a bit. 12 is quite a lot to get your head around, and they're not necessarily all that applicable or personalized to your own endpoint goals. So with what you want to achieve, how can you kind of formulate some principles and refine them over time to reliably guide your particular actions to the endpoint you want. And then ecosystems is looking at, so how are ecosystems composed? So with permaculture design, one of the underlying ideas is that in the systems we create, we want them to be regenerative. So when you look at a natural system, all the elements within that natural system collaborate and cooperate together to create regenerative outcomes. So a tree growing in a forest, for example, the growth of fruit by that tree will not only benefit the tree, but it will also benefit all these other elements in the forest. So over time, they've evolved to align their actions to create regenerative outcomes within that forest. So when we look at ecosystems, we look at what can we learn from the structure and composition of ecosystems, and how can we replicate that within the designs of our man-made systems. So in particular in permaculture, how can we create orchards and grazing systems and forestry structures and annual garden production systems in a way that best matches the patterns we see in natural ecosystems to also create regenerative outcomes. And the regenerative outcomes we're mostly interested in permaculture is building soil, so carbon sequestration and building healthy soil ecology, producing nutrient-dense organic food, and also you can measure the pollution of waterways, so you can see how you're recycling nutrients within your farm system so that there's not an excess runoff of nutrients entering into surrounding waterways, because it's a more self-contained system. And you can also look at regenerative outcomes as far as economic returns, so that it's producing economic return that can sustain that system and sustain your livelihood. You can look at regenerative outcomes as far as your own health and well-being, so the production of outputs in that system will also promote greater or better health outcomes within yourself, and also within the community group that's impacted by that design, or the family that's impacted by that design. So just looking at all the different elements that are attached to the system that you're creating, and looking at, are those different elements impacted in healthy ways or not. And then the regenerative system is then tying all those ideas together. So if you look at the patterns in nature and principles of design and how ecosystems work, how can you tie all those ideas together to create a regenerative system that creates those healthy outcomes? So module 3 is then looking at the particular understanding of different aspects of your site. So understanding climate, topography, water, soil, and then putting that together into a site analysis. So in permaculture design, it's quite important that the design you create is very specific to your site and shows a good awareness of the climate, topography, water and soil, and then using that awareness to create a regenerative system. And it's only through recognizing the dynamics within those different elements that you can create a design that's well suited to its landscape, well suited to the socio landscape that it's been designed within, well suited to your own resources and time and energy and the output you want from that system. So it's just looking at how you can understand all those different elements. Module 4 is then exploring possibilities. So these are all the different zones. So you've got healthy homes, annual gardens, perennial orchards, and holistic grazing. And The design task is down the bottom of all these modules. So the design task of this one is your concept sketches. And if you click these modules, they'll take you through to the particular content within the Weebly website that explains it. So for this one, for perennial orchard, it goes through some different videos on the design of permaculture perennial orchard. There's a couple of interviews there that I made with some people. There's some special topics, so if you click through to them, these are going into biodynamics. So biodynamics is a good system to deploy in an orchard. And I think there was another one there on plant propagation. So that just goes through different ways that you can propagate perennial plants and produce your own perennial plants, and look at genetics and breeding. And there's often a couple of extra little resources there that if you have time you can have a look at as well. There's some good online resources on these kind of things. There's often ebooks as well, so have a look. Just about all these pages in the course have a little ebook associated with it, so if you click on that it will download. And my internet's not that great here, but when it uploads, I'll come back to that one and show you in a sec, but when it uploads there's a little written summary of that topic with some extra information. So the delivery of content within the course is basically through the videos and the ebooks, and then the Moodle site that you see here is the way that all of the content is being structured. So this is the ebook that I just downloaded. So you can see this one's for plant reproduction and propagation. So it goes through all the different topics to do with that. There's also these little check things here. So every time you work through this course and you open up one of these topics, it will check off that you've done it, and there's a check associated with the design tasks too. So that will give you an overview of your progress through the course, so you can see which topics you've looked at and which design tasks you've submitted. Then module 5 is looking at the support structures. So at the end of module, so you've come up with your concept sketches in module 4, and then module 5 you come up with your final design and the description of it and your implementation strategy. And part of part of all of those really is what can best support you in the creation of your designs. So you've got relationships, important relationships that can support you in achieving this design outcome that you want. There may be technology that can support you in production, and of course finances to support it too. So it's like looking at all your different resources that you have available to you, and looking at different ways to look at those resources and different support that you might be able to access to improve your success within the system you design. So when you do these different design task submissions, I'll give you some feedback through the course, and you can also put them to that Facebook group and get feedback from others too. So that's a great way to again get that collaborative learning. And then that feedback and your own evolution of thought through the course will really help refine and develop your ideas, so that when you come to this final submission down the end there, you should have had lots of opportunity to really think about these different topics and get lots of feedback from myself and others, so that your final design submission is of best quality it can be, and will line you up for the best success for implementing that design strategy. So there's also a link down there, which is in the introduction module 2, and that just kind of outlines the design task and the different parts to that final design. So that's the course. So please ask. Probably email is the best way to get hold of me, richard@agrifutures.co.nz, if you're not sure about any of this, and I'll update I'll do little update videos on these different topics too, and add some more information on how to navigate them coming up. So thanks for joining the course, and I hope you enjoy your learning. Bye.